Now, live with Greg Olson, Director of the New York State Office for the Aging.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Greg Olson. I'm the Director of the New York State Office for Aging. I'm really excited about this show today. It's going to be a little bit different than what we advertised, but I think you'll understand why when we do this. First of all, it's May 1st, and May is Older Americans Month, which we really get excited about. Now, while we always talk about the value that older adults bring to their families, to their communities, economically, socially, and intellectually, May has been designated as Older Americans Month, going all the way back to John F. Kennedy. So we're excited to do that, to talk about, again, their value and certainly all the volunteers that not only we rely on in our network, but the thousands of not-for-profits that many older adults stand up every day. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit today about some of the key accomplishments that we had in 2024. We're going to talk a little bit about what we can expect in the New York State budget that's going to impact positively older adults. And then we would be remiss if we didn't have a conversation about some proposed changes at the federal level. So I get to introduce one of my favorite people, Becky Prevey, who is the executive director of the Association on Aging in New York State, because what we have going on here at the state versus the federal is kind of a tale of two different worlds. And we're going to get into that today. So Becky, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you.
Thanks so much for having me.
And tell us where you are.
So I am currently in Boston, networking with some of our amazing partners on all things caregiving. So super happy to join you guys virtually.
Great. And I appreciate you doing that, being out of town. So Becky, you have a really unique background, which I think has really helped in your effectiveness in the job that you do. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what the Association on Aging in New York actually is and does.
Sure. So I have spent my entire career in health and human services, did a lengthy stay at an acute care hospital as a social worker, discharge planning, so really well versed in the healthcare ecosystem, and realized in that role that I absolutely loved working with the older population, which is how I became an Office for the Aging Director in upstate New York, and then was able to transition to represent all 59 of the area agencies on aging in the state of New York. And really what we do here at the association is we try to raise awareness about ageism, to talk about the value of the older population, and really to advocate for resources to support non-Medicaid eligible individuals to be able to remain in homes and communities as long as possible, and really work within the confines of the healthcare system to make sure that we're getting to people on the prevention side of things instead of being a crisis-driven network that's only showing up when someone is hospitalized or looking at a nursing home placement. So really all about holistic care. Obviously work really closely with you at the New York State Office for the Aging, work with all of our state elected officials on funding. And I think we're going to talk about this more in depth, but really have targeted raising awareness at the federal level to protect the Older Americans Act and the programs that people are dependent upon.
Yeah, and I think what's amazing is over the last 4 or 5 years, right, the big buzzword is social determinants of health. How you integrate those with technology and clinical care for the best outcomes possible. And social care is something that our network has been doing literally since the early 70s. So it's not new to us. It's a model that, thank God is finally starting to take shape, because you fail unless we have all the pieces together and serving people holistically. You talked about ageism, and that is a really important topic to me. As you know, over the last 12 or 13 years, we've been aggregating the value that older adults bring, because we have grown up in this society and culture for some reason that paints older adults with a very, very broad brush, that they are expensive, that they don't contribute, that they're all old and frail, and so on and so forth. So talk a little bit about the value of older adults in New York State.
So it's absolutely enormous. And to your point, a lot of the work that we do is advocating for older people that have needs. And so that's what becomes visible. But if you actually look at the economics of the older population and the inherent value that they bring to the state of New York, but also nationally, we get way more benefit from the older population than the cost to support those individuals that do have some needs. And I think what's really telling, and this was very useful to us in our advocacy, older people to the state of New York contribute $72 billion per year in state and local taxes. That's about 43% of the tax base. So people over the age of 60 are paying for our education systems. They're paying for our hospitals, our roads and bridges. If you look nationally, over $719 billion in GDP has been generated by the older population. Older people are supporting almost 6 million jobs. Just in Social Security in the state of New York, older people are bringing in $59 billion annually. And then if you look at the value of their contributions in society, so volunteerism, a lot of our programs and services, like our home delivered meal program, health insurance counseling, those jobs are done by volunteers that don't get paid for that service. And a lot of people don't realize this, but people over the age of 60 are contributing over 442 million hours of service. If we had to pay that at the fair market rate, that would be worth $13.2 billion. If you look at caregivers, so I think we're going to talk about caregivers in the show today. We have over 4 million caregivers in the state of New York that are providing uncompensated care to a loved one. If you had to pay that at the fair market value, you're talking about $39 billion per year. So this lens that the older population is a problem is just inherently wrong. We wouldn't have a state, federal or local economy without the contributions of older people. And that's really a lot of the work that we're doing, not only in the state of New York, but also nationally, is to try to flip that script and talk about this from not just a cost benefit analysis, but also, it is inherently our responsibility to make sure that we're keeping older people here and we're keeping them healthy, and that we're supporting them to remain in homes and communities for as long as possible, because they are the economic backbone of our country.
Yeah, and I think, we both individually and collectively, we present together constantly. And I appreciate you bringing up those facts, because when we go places to speak or hear somebody speak, they'll talk about what they're doing. They'll talk about how they're doing it. But we never ask the question about why. Why are we doing what we're doing? Why are we presenting this information? Because they're vital to the community, and we want to keep these contributions in the community. We want to keep people out of hospitals, ER visits, observation status. We want to keep people out of nursing homes by providing support services that are so much cheaper to provide in the community. And just a couple of other things to build upon what you were saying. You talked about Social Security and the $59 billion. New York State pensions through the state retirement system is $10.8 billion that goes back into communities. Non-New York State pensions, so all other pensions, is another $30 billion. And then if you look at home ownership rates, and this is really important in a state like New York, which is a home rule state, is that the overwhelming majority of older adults, around 70%, own their own homes. Many don't have mortgages, so they're sitting on trillions of dollars of home equity, but they're paying for Medicaid locally. They're paying for the schools. They're paying the local taxes, and they're supporting local businesses. And I think the reason that we always want to point this out is it's the why, but to your point, it makes us start to think about older adults differently than how we were brought up. Watching cartoons, for example, and how they portray older people, movies, written media, all the anti-aging stuff. I mean, what's the alternative to aging, Becky?
It's death. So
it is, right. So, and I think we've always said growing older is not the problem. It's how we've organized our caring economy. So in your opinion, I mean, we were going to spend a lot of time today. We were on just the things that I think you and we collectively as a network accomplished in 2024. We modified that down a bit, but what are some of the things that you're most proud of?
So first and foremost, I am so proud of the 59 area agencies on aging and our 1,200 plus subcontractors that provide these vital services day in and day out. I think that is something to be extremely proud of. We run the largest nutrition program in the country, which is something we're obviously very proud of. But I really think we have changed the dynamic in the state of New York to talk about the value proposition of the older population, but also why we need to invest in services. And so when you look at the state, we have, close to 5 million people over the age of 60, we only have 111,000 licensed skilled nursing facility beds. So institutional care is not going to be a solution to the older population. So we need robust home and community-based services. And we were thrilled this year with the proposed executive budget, which literally put in $45 million to address the waiting list for services that people need. So we're very proud of that. I think the other thing that has really taken shape nationally is all of the innovations that we have been able to partner on to support people outside of our normal book of business. So a lot of people think of the AAA like home delivered meals, home care services. But in the state of New York, we have been able to expand a lot of public-private tech partnerships that are supporting people that don't get those core services, but need caregiving support or need online education or need ability to generate revenue from the work that they're doing. And so I'm sure you want to talk a little bit about the data of our partners with Get Set Up, TruAlta, Archangels.
Well, I think what I want to ask you is you're right. We have 28 public-private partnerships with tech companies that fill a lot of gaps. And it's not a replacement for human beings, but it's another tool in the toolbox. And we're serving 1 million more people for pennies on the dollar. What I was hoping that you would do, though, today, Becky, is to really highlight three. Not that they're more important than others, but they are free for any New Yorker. Well, one of them is for anybody over 50. The other two are free for anybody. And you mentioned the word caregiver, and just so the audience is aware, because a lot of people misuse that word. There are professional caregivers. What you're talking about is a family friend or neighbor that is providing some type of uncompensated care to somebody else. So walk through some of these real innovative tech solutions that we've been able to partner on.
So on the caregiving side, we realized through our work with Archangels and the Caregiver Intensity Index that people in a caregiving role, number one, don't self-identify, and number two, are really struggling. And a lot of people didn't have access to resources or supports that could actually help them in their caregiving journey. And so for the past 3 years, TruAlta has become completely free for anyone in the state of New York. So again, we just saw the QR code for the Caregiver Intensity Index. It's a very brief two-minute kind of check-in on your caregiving journey, but then you instantly get directed to resources that support you in your caregiving journey.
Alex, I'm sorry to interrupt. Alex, can you pull up the Archangels website? I'm sorry, Becky, continue.
And so again, you can see here, once you get linked, you're kind of put in a category, red, yellow, or green. And you can see here that if you're in the red, you are having some type of impact on your overall health and well-being, mental health in your caregiving journey. And what we wanted to do is to make sure that not only do you get your score, but then you're instantly connected to resources that support you. What's beautiful about the Caregiver Intensity Index is it also gives you the tools to know what things are driving your intensity. That might be difficult family dynamics. You might have lower income and you can't afford your caregiving journey, but it also tells you what's supporting you. And that might be you have a really supportive employer, or you're really well versed in health insurance plans, so that's not a struggle for you. So you instantly get tangible information based on getting your score. And then what we've done with Archangels is partnered with TruAlta, which is an online evidence-based caregiver platform. It's completely free for any New Yorker. And that gets you customized information on your caregiving journey, gives you tools, tips, and tricks. And you can get that in whatever form you want. Some people like to listen to a podcast while they make dinner. Some people want to print something and read it. Other people might want to watch a video. And so it's completely customizable for your caregiver journey. I think what a lot of us know is when you're in an active caregiver role, you have no time. And so if you just Google caregiving, you're going to get information on a whole variety of caregiving, right? But if you're dealing with someone with a cognitive impairment with sundowning, you only want information on how to deal with that behavior. You don't want the rest of the noise. TruAlta completely customizes that for you. And what we have seen through our partnership with TruAlta is that we're actually impacting caregivers that are bringing a loved one to the emergency department. We've seen a 25% reduction in having to utilize emergency departments. So again, the support that we give to the over 4 million caregivers is imperative for the overall health and well-being of the older population and caregivers. And I think, to that point, we're serving people from the age of 60 to 110 years old. We are serving generations. So a caregiver journey for, someone that's caring for someone in their early 60s might look very different than someone that's 95. Again, we're trying to make things as customizable as possible. So again, this has been shared on the live stream. I highly encourage anybody to check out Trewalta, get your caregiver intensity index. It also will link you directly to New York State Office for the Aging and the New York Connects program, so you can get access to local resources that may be able to assist you in your caregiver journey. So huge plug for our New York Connects program. That's the 1-800 number. You can call that from anywhere in the state of New York. You will get linked directly to your locality, and they can provide you information and assistance on any and all of these programs, which I think is a huge benefit to the general population.
Yeah, and I know that, we didn't plan this, but I believe the CEO of Archangels, Alex Strain, is sitting in the room with you. So that was, again, it's coincidence. There she is right there. So if you're from New York and have been to anything that we've been at, you've seen Alex. But, a couple of other points, that to talk about. So Archangels, you saw the QR code in the website. The Trewalta, we call the New York Caregiver Portal, and I believe Alex had put up that website powered by Trewalta. And I think one of the things that I'm most proud of with these partnerships is the willingness to cross-integrate. So if you show up at this page, right, the portal, you can get connected to Archangels and the CII and vice versa, as well as New York Connects. And I think another really critical data point for the Trewalta platform is a 15-month delay in nursing home placement by getting the tools and supports that you need to, again, support you in your caregiving journey, which I think is critically important. And the introduction of that platform through live like this or anonymous support groups, which have really been embraced. So appreciate that. Talk a little bit about, and if you could quickly, we're a little over time on this segment, Get Set Up.
So again, we're trying to expand programming outside of that traditional book of business. Get Set Up is another online platform. People have this misnomer that older people don't use technology. It's an absolute lie. Older people use technology at the same rate as the general public. And the wonderful thing about Get Set Up is not only is it free for any New Yorker, there are classes exclusively taught by people over the age of 50, to people over the age of 50. The first classes that you take on Get Set Up are literally how to use Zoom, your iPhone, or an Android, so people instantly become comfortable with the technology. And then you can see here, there are thousands upon thousands of classes, again, taught by older individuals who get paid for teaching the classes. So if you have a skill and you're over the age of 50, you can actually get paid to teach a class. And you can take classes in multiple languages. You can take them on multiple topics. And I think what's been surprising to us since we've launched this partnership is the #1 classes for 3 years running are health and wellness classes. So people are taking classes on nutrition or exercise programs. And again, Get Set Up has been one of our partners who also integrates all of the other amazing things that we're doing. And an example that comes to mind is we're doing a lot of work on sepsis because we work with the older population. We're trying to identify signs and symptoms of sepsis. Get Set Up embedded that in their platform. So we're reaching millions more people with a whole variety of educational programs and services. And it's really visionary when you look at other states and what they're doing in their aging departments. New York is really standing out as being completely innovative and really forward thinking on how we increase overall population health. Because again, if you're eating well and you're exercising and you're engaged in your community and you're not socially isolated, you're not going to become sicker earlier. And that's really what the focus has been.
Right. And those are features also to reduce your risk of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So I want to shout out to Lawrence and Paul and the entire team at Get Set Up. Take a look at this video, though. Learn a little bit more.
My name is Omi. I'm a teaching artist. When people say, oh, I'm not creative, I can't do it, I show you that you can. I live alone. During the pandemic, my grandson had an accident, left him paralyzed. I was just feeling numb. But all of a sudden, there was Get Set Up in my face.
I am going to do this live right now.
It was exactly what I needed. A creative therapy session.
Now look at this.
Omi, it is so beautiful and it was so relaxing.
I love doing this.
Get Set Up saved my life, and I just wanted people to try it.
And I want people to try it too for free. You can go to our site, aging.ny.gov, and you'll find it there. Or Alex has already put the website on the lower third. So you and I do a lot of work at the state level, right? Whether it be policy, program, funding, legislation, et cetera. I couldn't be more proud of Governor Hochul, her theme, which I think is really going to be reflective in the budget, not only for us, but for everybody else, is about affordability. It's about public safety, and it's about livability. People may not know that New York became the first age-friendly state in the nation in 2018. And we continue to build upon that, not only with how we design our communities, because that really matters in terms of overall health and wellness, but that we embarked on a 10-year plan through the Master Plan for Aging, which should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. So, normally the state budget is passed on April 1st. We're expecting it probably sometime next week. But it's really what the governor proposed that I wanted to ask you some questions on. What are some of the positive investments in NYSOFA that we can expect through this budget process?
So what we're really excited about is we've talked for decades about the cost benefit to keeping people off Medicaid. And that's really the space that we work within, right? We're serving people that are non-Medicaid eligible, but they're barely above that income benchmark. And we know what happens to an individual that can't access services in the community. They end up going to a higher level of care or spending down to Medicaid. And so we know we can save the state money by investing in these preventative services to keep people off Medicaid and out of skilled nursing facilities. And that's where you see the investment. So we had a very robust waiting list for services. So again, based on budgets, if you go to your locality and you need a service like a personal care aide in your home, if there's not funding available, you're placed on a waiting list. And so the investment in the proposed executive budget included funding to actually address the waiting list for those individuals that we have placed on a waiting list program. But you have to look at the budget kind of holistically on how other items obviously impact the older population, because as you say, Greg, people don't just live at the state office for the aging. They're in every facet of the community.
What's the value, I'm sorry to interrupt, of what was proposed? Because one of the successes you had in 24 was an additional $10 million to go into what we call unmet need, but it's really what you say, it's addressing the wait lists. But what did the governor propose this year for NYSOFA's budget? And then I do want to talk about the other agencies, because you're right. Like me, like you, like kids and families and older adults, we touch many, many agencies and systems. But what can we expect in the NYSOFA budget? And how is that going to impact your members and the many not-for-profits that we work with?
It's going to have a huge impact. So not only did we get a restoration of that $10 million that we had received previously, we got an additional $35 million to address the waiting list. And that money goes directly to services. So that money will go to the counties, who are then able to turn those services on for individuals. And these services, a lot of people don't realize they're really life-sustaining services. So if you don't drive and you need to go to chemotherapy or dialysis, and you don't have Medicaid, we're your transportation provider. Again, if you can't get up and take a shower independently on your own, you're going to end up in an assisted living or a skilled nursing facility. We put a home health aide in that home to assist you. So that money will turn those services on for individuals, this is the most historical sizable investment into the New York State Office for the Aging budget ever. So I think we're finally at a point where people are identifying we have an older population. We need to support the older population. We need to keep people in homes and communities because it saves the state overall money to keep people healthy and happy in their homes. So we're super thrilled as far as the additional unmet need funds, which can go to those targeted services. But there was also a restoration of the long-term care ombudsman programming funding to the tune of over $6 million. There was expansion of child tax credits. We have a lot of grandparents that are raising grandchildren.
Yeah, so talk about that, because we do point out the child tax credit and the free meals for schools. Why would somebody who cares about older people care about that?
And this was raised at the budget hearing, and I thought it was wonderful that a member of the assembly had an aha moment to say, yeah, if you're a grandparent raising grandchildren, free school lunch is a huge win for you, right? Because it's going to put money back in your pocket. It also saves you the time of having to prepare that child a meal when you're sending them out the door in the morning. So all of these things, and the child tax credit, same thing, they have a trickle effect to those individuals that are part of multi-generational families. We also look at, inflationary rebate checks if they're able to be distributed to the older population. That's additional groceries for an individual. There was expanded victim support services for scam victims. Very excited about that. We know scams are costing billions of dollars every year, and we need a way to be able to get those funds back. There was also strengthening drug driving laws, lowering speed limits on the e-bikes in New York City. That's been a huge problem for the older population. Investments in agriculture, right? So we have the largest nutrition program in the country. So investments in agriculture are going to help us in the programs and services that we provide.
Do you have any idea what the average age of the New York farmer is?
I believe it's 57 years old.
Yes, it is. And so in addition to the nutrition part of it, many farmers are older adults, so it will help them as well.
Absolutely. And again, so when you look holistically, there are middle class tax cuts that are going to improve access for the older population. Banning investors from buying homes. So again, housing is a huge issue in the state of New York. Subway safety, banning rent price fixing. A lot of consumer protections were put into place, which are going to help older individuals, mental health access, enhancing veteran suicide prevention. Again, we're going to talk about the federal cuts that we're looking at. We really need to support veterans because we have a lot of them in the state of New York and we work really closely with them. So again, all of these things collectively are going to support, that segment of the population that we try to serve. And I think, it's really telling that by 2030, well over half of the counties are going to have more than 30% of their population over the age of 60. So this is kind of looking to the future on where we need to continue to build our infrastructure. But again, the things in this year's budget we're really excited about.
Yeah, and you're right. And, just a couple things you said earlier, we talk about the why, right? The economic, social, intellectual capital of what older adults bring, and the ability to show a savings to Medicaid, a return on investment. So since we established the unmet need pot in 2019, how much, when this budget passes, would we have received through that funding stream since 2019?
You're going to make me
You don't have it on the tip of your tongue, I know.
I don't.
It's $200 million. When you can make the case of the value of the population and the value of what this network does, the investments have been an additional $200 million since 2019, which is extraordinarily significant. And again, have to thank the governor. This is affordability. This is livability. This is public safety. We're going to take.
I think to that point, Greg, what a lot of people don't realize is we have a lot of data on the services that we provide. Our average client is a low-income female who's 83 years old, who lives alone, who has 4 to 10 chronic conditions like diabetes, congestive heart failure, and can't get up, get dressed, take a shower, or drive. And so if you look at that individual, they would qualify to go to a higher level of care. And 98% of higher level of care is paid for with Medicaid funds, to the tune in a skilled nursing facility, $160,000 per year. We serve that client on average between 6 and 7 years for less than $10,000 per year with holistic case management and hands-on care. So again, when you talk about the investment, it's forward thinking to invest in services that are cheaper, that have a huge return on investment overall in a state with a very large Medicaid budget.
Yeah, and I think your other point is spot on, right? Nursing homes, first of all, we don't have the beds, and it should never be the first line of defense. There's going to be people that are going to need residential care, but it shouldn't be the go-to. It can't. It's just the numbers just don't bear that out. So, communities, this is what, it's always interesting because AARP does a survey every year of, how many people want to remain at home, and it's usually 9 out of 10. And my question is always, who's that other one person, right? It's like
it's the same 4 out of 5 dentists that recommend Colgate, right? There's always the one.
I was just going to say that. Yeah. So I appreciate that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get into kind of a different conversation because there's so much good news that Becky just walked through. And that's just really a snapshot of what we're anticipating when the budget passes. It's a very, very different story for our network at the federal level, and we're going to talk about that. So first, take a look at this video on the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. So for anybody out there that's looking for a very rewarding volunteer experience, that's the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. It sends volunteers, trained and full-time staff into residential facilities like nursing homes to advocate on behalf of the client to assure quality of care. And if there's a health and safety issue, they report that directly to the regulators, which is the New York State Department of Health. So it's a really, really important advocacy and systems program. Becky, there's a lot of uncertainty at the federal level. You and I just presented at a national conference in Orlando where we modified a little bit our presentation because, you know, there was a lot of rumors, right, earlier on in the year of what potentially may or may not happen at the federal level with funding, services, policy, et cetera. But now we kind of know what we're dealing with because we have a little bit more information. First, I would like to, and this is a picture of a press conference that we were with under the leadership of Governor Hochul, Senator Gillibrand, really talking about the potential impact to Social Security on some of the changes that were being proposed. But I think a lot of people understand the services at the community level, right? They know what a home delivered meal is or a meal at a congregate setting. They know about transportation, our health insurance counseling program, personal emergency response systems. I could go on and on, home modifications, but they often don't know where those funds are sourced. Can you tell the audience what ACL is and what's happening?
Well, I'll tell the audience what ACL was. So again, when you look at the federal level, there's what's called the Older Americans Act, which was signed into law in 1965. And that's really our charter on how to serve the older population. And what the federal government realized back in 2012 is that there really needed to be a standalone federal representative for aging and disability services. And so the Administration for Community Living was founded and basically took the aging services infrastructure and the disability infrastructure to see how they could work more effectively with one another. And so all of the state units on aging report to the Administration for Community Living. And again, we're trying to be very factual in what we're talking about because there is a lot of misinformation in the community and it's become very political. This is just factual information. So the Administration for Community Living was completely dissolved and about 50% of the staff at the Administration for Community Living were terminated. And so those functions of aging services and disability services have been split, some to CMS for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and some to Office of Children and Family Services. And so it's very concerning from the aging services side that we no longer have that standalone federal representation through the Administration for Community Living. So that was kind of hit number one. That did not come inherently with funding cuts. That was just something that was targeted for efficiencies. Obviously, we opposed that dismantlement of ACL, as did numerous other states and other aging services providers. But what has come after ACL has been
Yeah,
dismantled.
and so we'll get into that. I'll ask you a few questions. And so we're really unsure at the moment if there's going to be a hiccup or not in, not just our funding, but our communications. Because as you said, some was moved to CMS, some was moved to Administration for Community and Families. Our number one priority is to make sure that we get our next 2 quarters. So it's called an NGA, a Notice of Grant Award. And that's the federal funds that we expect that comes to the state that then we can send to your members along with state funding. And then they get that out into the community to provide the actual services. All of this infrastructure is under what's called Health and Human Services, HHS. And there's been a reorganization. This has been part of it. But when I said we have more detail, and I want to underscore your point, this is not a political conversation. This is a factual conversation about what Health and Human Services submitted as their fiscal year 26 budget request to what's called OMB, the Office of Management and Budget. And that document is on our website if anybody wants to check it out, because it's factual. They submit it to OMB. OMB, released it. We all have it. And now we know what we're dealing with. So walk us through what some of the changes are that they've proposed. And I believe Alex has some visuals to talk while you're talking.
Sure. So they have proposed a cut to our nutrition program. So that would be for home delivered meals and congregate meals. So we're looking at a funding cut there. More concerning, we're very concerned, obviously, with any funding cuts, but there's actually been proposed program complete eliminations. And to your point, Greg, a lot of people know what the services are, but they don't understand where that funding comes from. So we get federal funds, state funds, and then county funds to provide these services. And these are some of the titles that actually fall underneath that. And what I want to highlight is they have actually proposed to completely eliminate federal funding for the long-term care ombudsman program, which we just talked about, for evidence-based programs that improve overall health. So that's like chronic disease self-management, diabetes self-management, falls prevention programs, complete elimination of elder abuse funding for prevention and mitigation, complete elimination of lifespan respite grants, that's providing respite services to individuals who are caring for someone else. We talked a little bit about the health insurance counseling program. Anybody that has become eligible for Medicare knows how very difficult it is to find a plan that's appropriate for you and that saves money. We provide that assistance through the state health insurance plans, again, proposed to be completely eliminated. There's also proposed elimination of all federal adult protective services funding.
Yep. So let's hold on that. Alex, if you can go back to that last slide, please. And then, Becky, I'm going to ask you about additional things in HHS. So you just went through this proposed, and we're going to continue to underscore proposed.
Right.
These things haven't happened yet, and there's time to weigh in on whether you agree or you don't agree. But we just talked about the long-term care ombudsman program, and that is proposed to be eliminated. So we received state funding, which we're so blessed that the governor and the legislature recognizes how important that is. But we get a considerable amount of resources under Title VII, as you see, for the long-term care ombudsman program that will directly impact the number of staff that can actually make visits. We're also going to show a little bit later some additional information on SHIP and what's called HICAP in New York. And Becky, you're absolutely right. Everybody during open enrollment in the fall, you're inundated on television with people trying to sell their plans. And when you've got dozens and dozens of Medicare Advantage plans, prescription drug plans, they pay insurance brokers to basically sell their plan. And we're the only ones that provide objective information that can look at your circumstances in a one-on-one and then look at the various plans so that you can make the best decision that's going to meet your needs. That program, if it's eliminated at the federal level, will cease to exist in New York State. And it's not selling anything. It's selling information and objectivity. So this is what you were talking about under ACL, but HHS is a very, very large organization. What other things in HHS are going to impact older adults and their families?
Unfortunately, there are a lot. And, we talked about this as far as the older population is impacted by multi segments, right? Health and hospital systems obviously are going to have an impact on the older population. And when you look at HHS and some of these proposals, one of the ones that's most concerning is complete elimination of the low income heating assistance program, LIHEAP. Again, this is life sustaining for people that are dependent on that heat benefit to heat their homes or to cool their homes in the summertime. There's also been discussion of completely eliminating the community services block grant under social services. Again, that would have a significant impact on those individuals that we're serving. And then when you look at some of the additional eliminations, they're talking about offices of rural health. And again, most of the state outside of New York City is rural with rural health hospital systems.
You mentioned adult protective services.
All of our falls prevention programs, the Title V employment program. They're also proposing to eliminate the traumatic brain injury division within the federal government and funding. They're cutting Alzheimer's research. They're cutting mental health and alcohol and substance abuse programs, overdose prevention, HIV, AIDS, and Ryan White funding. We know a lot of the people that are currently living with HIV or AIDS are actually older individuals themselves. They're looking at eliminating certified behavioral health, community behavioral health programs. A lot of mental health providers have transitioned to that model out of fee-for-service, and now they're proposing to potentially eliminate that. They're also looking at cutting healthcare workforce programs, cutting the National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health. And why that's so important is we just heard from Dr. Oz about 2 weeks ago that about 70% of the healthcare spend could be prevented if people could manage their chronic conditions. But this budget document includes completely cutting that program and service. There has been cuts to food banks that are impacting already here in the state of New York. And they're also limiting voting access for people with disabilities. They're talking about cutting the DDPCs, which is the Developmental Disability Planning Council, which we're very engaged with. So again, when you look collectively at these cuts to HHS, if they happen, they will absolutely have a direct impact on the older population that's trying to access services either in community-based settings or in hospital-based settings. And it's something we're really trying to work with federally elected officials to raise awareness that these programs are currently being considered to be cut and what that impact will mean for the older population, not only in the state of New York, but also nationally. So I talked to my partners across the country. All of them are very concerned with what this would mean because these are services that are already turned on. So cuts to these programs, it doesn't mean we're not going to serve additional people. It means that we're going to take a service away from people that are already utilizing that, which is really, really concerning for us.
Yeah, and I think the the larger document that was submitted by HHS to OMB is on our website, and these are just headers. Underneath a lot of these headers are multiple programs that have been funded to really improve overall health and wellness. So I know this is a lot for people to kind of absorb, right? And you'll continue. I heard you say it, and I've said it a million times. Proposed. It hasn't happened yet. The start of the federal fiscal year is October 1. It is May 1st. So if somebody were to say to you, Becky, what can I do? What would you tell them?
So we have made this as simple as possible to get the most interaction, because a lot of people feel like their voice in advocacy is just one voice and it's not heard. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. People that are making these decisions are elected by constituents. This audience they are the constituent base, right? And so you need to have your voice be heard. And I think a really good example of how you can impact these things are the fact that a lot of the changes to the Social Security Administration were actually pulled back because so many people called their elected representatives and had a voice. So what we have done is we've created on our website, it's very, very simple to use. When you go to our website, you can pick your New York State elected official at the federal level, and you can sign on to this letter. And again, it's very factual. We tried to make sure that we did our due diligence to make sure that this information was up to date and authentic, because people need to know what's happening. And again, it lists all these programs and services, and then you're able to enter your name, address, and credentials. We will take care of sending that to your elected representative. And I will tell you unequivocally, these are paid attention to, and the more people we can get to engage, regardless of political party, to say we want to protect the Older Americans Act and we want to protect services for the older population, those voices will be heard. So I highly encourage anybody that's watching this that says, I'm really concerned, take a few moments to be able to engage in our advocacy platform. Again, if you're not able to, based on internet, or you're not comfortable, you can always call the office and we can sign on for you. But it's really important that you have your voices heard.
Yeah, and again, I think it's not an effort to lobbying. This is an educational effort to provide more information. And, you know, these may be things that some people agree with, and they may be some things that some people don't agree with. But the beauty of living in a democracy is your voice. And, you know, to your point, I worked in the New York State Assembly for a member of the Assembly, and the constituent calls are critically important. So I just want to direct people to agingny.org. That's where you'll see some additional information, as well as a link to our site, which goes into a little bit more detail on what some of the programs are. It's always like acronym soup. So, you know, being able to provide a little bit more so you understand, you know, what these programs and services are and how they help people is really important. So that's going to do it for us today. We mentioned, you saw a video on the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. We're going to show you one as well from one of our volunteers on the Health Information Counseling and Assistance Program, which is also proposed to be eliminated. We're hoping that that does not happen, and that's a lot of the work that Becky and I are doing, you know, not only in New York, but across the country, is just to be factual on what's being proposed and, you know, see if we can make a difference. Coming in June, we'll be talking about World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. As always, I want to thank our amazing communications team, Alex, Darren, and Roger, for always making this production so successful. And Becky, it's always great to have you on, and I'm so appreciative that we get to work together on, you know, these issues that really matter to families, because that's really what this is all about. So let's key up the final video, and we'll see you guys soon.
I'm Randy. I've been a HICAP volunteer in Erie County for 5 years, and I love helping people. HICAP is a program to help people choose or find the best Medicare program for themselves. I like helping people walk out the door knowing they've got much better information. I love being a HICAP volunteer. Helping those people is maybe the most rewarding thing I've done outside of having a daughter. If you'd like to be a HICAP volunteer, call 518-474-2401.
Live with Greg is a production of the New York State Office for the Aging Communications Bureau. Please join us next time.